Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to The Healing Brain. This is our webinar and podcast here at Doman International that we do every week at the same time, 11 a.m. New York time, where parents with children with special needs join from around the world and they ask us their biggest and toughest questions, and we do our very, very best to answer them. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Julee Mahone. Julee is a nutrition staff coach here at Doman International. So on a regular day, you'd find Julee in the office teaching a family with a child with special needs their nutrition programs, are going for diet recommendations and supplement recommendations and tips for keeping the child healthy so that they can do the rest of their Doman program. So I've asked Julee to join us today to talk about picky eating. And Julee, I think it'd be probably most useful for all the parents if we talk both about the pickiest of eaters, but also even for children who may not necessarily be picky, but we just need to add more variety to their diet. What are recommendations that we could give for parents across the spectrum? And to be honest, probably in the modern age, almost every parent to some degree has some challenge with introducing foods to their kids, right? Because kids are kids and they're going to sometimes say no to things. And so I'm sure that we can give you some helpful recommendations today. But before we jump into the picky eating discussion, I just want to make a quick announcement. So Doman International, as usual, is traveling around the world to see families. So our next upcoming trips, we are seeing families in Melbourne, Australia later in June. In July, we're going to be seeing families at our European Center in Pisa, Italy at the end of July. And families come from around Europe to see us there. In August, we're going to be seeing families in New Zealand. At the end of September in Serbia and Croatia. And in November, we will be seeing, also in September, we're going to be seeing families in Miami, Florida. And in November, we'll be seeing families in New Delhi and Bangalore, India. We see families throughout the year at our headquarters here in Philadelphia in the United States, and also remotely online for families who cannot travel. All right, so Julee, let's jump into the conversation of picky eating. If you had to, I know I'm putting you on the spot with this question. If you had to give me an idea of what percentage of the children you've worked with special needs you would classify as a picky eater, what would be your guess in terms of percentage?
Probably about 50%. I would say, yeah. In terms of an initial nutrition program, we either are able to start like full and gung-ho, or we have to reel some things in back because we can't introduce all the foods that we want to introduce because there's picky eating that we have to help out with. So I would say probably about 50% of kids, which is a fairly good amount. Yeah, it's, different textures, either different foods, different colors of foods, having things on the same plate, touching. So there's like a whole gamut of picky eating that we work with the kids that we see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my guess is even if we looked at the neurotypical population, it's probably a percentage close to that as well. I mean, you just hear parents all the time complaining about picky eating, right? So this is not an issue which is reserved for children with special needs. What do you feel are some of the reasons why kids with special needs are more likely to be picky eaters?
I think because a lot of the time, new things in general a change in general is hard. And that's probably for most people as well too. But even slight changes can be really overwhelming. A change in texture, a change in color. So any type of new food that's presented, any type of new smell that's presented, any food that comes with a crunch that has a sound can be overwhelming. Yeah. So there's just a lot a new thing brings. And that's even starting kids from their, milk, having to try, different foods, solids to get used to that too, right? And there's so many different methods that parents use to go to puree, they go to baby-led weaning. So there's right from that gamut too, you are seeing a whole shift in change of nutritional needs and how to get, your child what they need from their food.
Yeah. And to your point, I think that I've just personally call it mental rigidity. I think mental rigidity is a more common symptom of brain injury or neurodevelopmental issues, and just how certain children might have physical rigidity, right? They might have rigid arms and legs, which is a symptom. Some children have mental rigidity, and certainly that's something that with the Doman Method program can start to reduce or even go away, but it's still something that we have to confront while it's here. And then along with what you're saying, those textures that are challenges, even you mentioned certain foods, the sounds they make when children bite down. Children with neurodevelopmental issues are more likely to be hypersensitive to their smell, to their taste, to sounds. And so even you pointed out sounds, which is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but sounds inside of our head are more accentuated, right? So if you're hypersensitive to sound, the crunchiness sound is going to be even louder for you. And many children are hypersensitive to sounds, to smells and taste as well. And so a taste that might seem rather subtle to us, to them might sound or might smell or taste overwhelming.
Right.
Got it. So what are some of the ways that with the Doman program, as you said, it's very common for picky eaters to begin our program. What are some of the things we might try with those kids to help open up their palate a bit?
Yeah. So one of the first things we might recommend is oral integration. We do see it on a cognitive side of things too, to help with speech, but it also helps with picky eating, because even though there is some maybe hypersensitivity to the foods that the child's eating, there could also be, a lack of feeling of it as well. So I'm not feeling enough in my mouth to feel the food. And, that's scary, right? So if I can't feel it, I can't tell if I'm chewing it. Maybe not be chewing properly. I maybe not be able to swallow properly, which then, I choke on it and, I'm afraid of choking. So there's that side of that too. The oral integration has two parts to it, making sure that, there's a device to help the child feel the textures on the inside of their mouth, as well as the outside on their face. So what we do is we go through with families on how to do the oral integration program at home. It's typically done a couple times a day. If anyone's doing sequences, they're doing it a couple times within the sequence, if that works for their child. Or a lot of the times too, and I've done this with Juliet at home, we do it right before we eat. Or at night before we brush our teeth, we'll do an oral integration session, and then we'll brush our teeth. And it has helped out a lot. But it all depends on what works for your child too. But it is done multiple times throughout the day, just to help give as much opportunity in the day as possible to have feeling in the mouth and on the face. But that would probably be the first place that we would start. And then we would bring some things at home, maybe some desensitization of the sensory input, introducing any new food gradually, and involving it in the program.
Sorry, Julie, before we get into adding new foods, just to talk a little bit more about oral integration, are there specific brushes that you recommend for that?
Yes. So we have the Nook brush that we recommend for inside of the mouth. It is a brush that has some little nodules on it, just to give helpful feeling to the mouth. And anytime we do the program, we recommend you holding your child's face so that you're able to feel, what does that feel like on the other side of the cheek, or whatnot, making sure that, your child is safe, number one. But that's done. That brush is used all over the cheeks, the inside of the lip, under the tongue, on top of the tongue, on the palate. However you can get it in your child's mouth is helpful. And then there's a brush called the Z-Vibe brush, which is more square-like, does have some smaller nodules to it, and it does vibrate. So that is done on the outside of the face, and along the jawline, around on the lips, top and bottom, just to give feeling and sensation to the outside of the face.
Yeah, and I'm just pulling up a video. Maybe we could just quickly look at it together, Julie. Let's see. Is the video playing for you on the screen?
It is.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so here we can see a mom, and she's doing an oral integration session. Now, she's actually using the Z-Vibe brush here, which is a vibrating, as Julie said, a vibrating oral integration tool. And you can see that she is brushing. She's starting in this session by doing the inside of the lips. I'm sorry, the inside of the cheeks. There are actually nerves that run through the cheeks that help us control the mouth and things like facial expressions. So stimulating the inside of the cheeks is very helpful. Now you're going to see this mom is doing the inside. Actually, now she's doing the gums. This is a very cooperative girl. She's very sweet. She's letting her mom do it. So here she's doing the gums. Right. And we're going to do this for both for children who are hypersensitive, overly sensitive, or children who lack sensitivity inside of their mouths, because both of those children need stimulation. The only difference is the intensity level, right? With a child who's very sensitive, we're going to go slower, more gradually, more lightly. For a child who doesn't feel well, we're going to go stronger. Mm-hmm. Now mom is doing the inside of the lips, very important so that the child can feel their lips, right? That feeling your lips well is very important for things like drinking from a straw, facial expressions, articulating sounds. Now, this girl, again, very cooperative. So at this point, she's doing a session which is a couple of minutes long, but for a child who's brand new, the sessions would likely be shorter just to improve tolerance. Now you can see mom is stimulating the roof of the mouth. As Julie said, if the child permits it, great. And here we're doing the tongue. Some children really need a while to get used to this sensation. They might even bite down. But yeah, that's a pretty typical oral integration session for inside of the mouth.
Yeah, okay. That was a great video.
Great, yeah.
I would say a lot of the times we don't start that intense. And if the Nook brush does not vibrate, but the vibration inside the mouth could be a whole other thing too. So it may be best to start with something a little less intense, like a toothbrush. You have the bristles on one side, which can be inside of the mouth, and the other solid part of the brush can be used on the outside of the face. So it all depends too. We don't ever want to make your child feel like they're afraid, but it does take time to be okay with these devices. So starting with less intense, smaller sessions, shorter time inside the mouth or out on the face is always the best place to start.
Perfect. Now you were talking about adding variety. So how would a parent start the process of doing that?
So I find as much as you can involve nutritional things in other parts of the program is really helpful. So doing reading Doman cards with the different food groups or the foods that they're not so comfortable with, like if they're not a fan of certain fruits, you're doing your fruit cards, adding them into, seeing the pictures, seeing the words, super helpful to give opportunity to see that they're there. Making a homemade book about it. These are why we eat these foods. This is why, fruits help us, vegetables help us. Or, here's a homemade book about all of the red fruits, right? We're getting used to seeing them all in one place, saying the words, seeing the pictures, is super helpful to make them not so scary. Then when you get to that point where you're ready to start to introduce something, as much as you can involve your child is super helpful. So if you go to the grocery store and they are coming along with you, maybe giving them a choice board option of which red fruit do you want to try this week. And we put that red fruit, they pick it out, we put it on the table and, we talk about it. We don't necessarily need to try it. It's there. It's no pressure. And then, slowly things, we take away the pressure. Maybe there's a touch of the food. There's a smell of it. Right? We're doing the program. And then maybe one day they try it. right? And that's a huge win. We celebrate it with the joyousness program. Maybe it's one thing that we talk about at the end of the day. That was the best, Henry tried a strawberry today and, he ate it, and maybe he wasn't a fan, but he tried it. So as much as you can involve, the other parts of the program with the nutrition program is super helpful. Frequency, intensity, duration is what we're talking about. So that's how I would recommend introducing anything new. And just like any parts of the program, it is gradual, right? So we take our time, we do it slowly at the pace that your child needs, so that there's no pressure and it's not scary.
Yeah, and Julie, you touched on something very important there, which is about using the different senses. And for some children, we'll even do something called five senses stimulation, where we will take a piece of fruit or a vegetable or something that they can taste, and we'll allow them to experience it through all the five senses, right? So we'll show them something, right? Like we'll show them a picture. I just happen to have cards of vegetables here, right? So for example, you'd show them, hey, here are peas, right? So you show them a picture of it, or you just show them the food in real life. And you also tell them what it is, right? So you're instructing them, you're intellectualizing the food, right? Instead of just assuming, oh, they know what this is. Talk about it, right? And then you let them feel it. And then you let them smell it. And then finally, the last step would be taste. Okay. And so you can kind of see a part of this is, when a child is allowed to really experience that food in different ways, it desensitizes them. It reduces that fear or defensiveness element, and they're more willing to taste it in the end. And I do want to point out one important thing. Smelling often precedes tasting, because many children with neurodevelopmental issues are overly sensitive to smell. And a lot of parents don't realize that when children reject certain foods, very often they aren't necessarily rejecting the taste, they're rejecting the smell. When we have food inside of our mouths, and we always think, oh, we're tasting the food, but actually 70% of that experience is smelling the food. In the back of our throats, there's a canal that leads up to our sinuses, and we actually smell the food through that passage. So we literally smell food when it's inside of our mouths. And for children with hypersensitive smells, that's why they can be very overwhelmed. They might even gag to certain foods that we don't gag, that we wouldn't have that kind of strong response to. And so allowing a child to smell foods is a really important precursor to helping them taste it. Can you talk a little bit about that, Julie, about that connection between smell and taste and what you might do with a kid?
Yeah, so I think that's why we don't pressure for anything, right? We don't pressure for the smell, we don't pressure for the taste. We just have the food item out, in a safe place. Parents are eating it, siblings are eating it, really taking the pressure off of, oh, it's just an ordinary strawberry, right? There's no big deal about it, right? It's a red fruit. It's sweet. We've been talking about it all week. I've seen mom eat it. I'm going to smell a little bit of it. Even when the smell happens, it's a big deal, right? We are celebrating it. It's huge. And then more often than not, I've seen, and then he just tried it. Like, it was just like a typical day. Nothing new happened. And then, the strawberries were out on the counter. Mom left them there. And then she just noticed out of the corner of her eye, he picked one up and he ate it. I think really the pressure behind, I just want my kid to eat, a meal, right? I just want him to eat good food, and we're not having chicken nuggets all the time. That's a lot of pressure, right? And taking all that away, celebrating the wins, as small as they are, is really helpful, especially with that first smell is huge. Getting it that close to their face to be able to smell it and to pick it up in their hands, like, is just a big win to begin with. And there can be a lot of other things happening at the same time, right? That's a lot of anxiety. It's so close to me. It's so close to my lips, right? And it's right there. And if the taste happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's still a big win.
Julie, we got some pre-submitted questions. So here's one that we got. How can I help my son eat different types of food? So we talked a little bit about oral integration and using smell.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts about that? You said bringing them shopping, involving them in the food choosing process. Any other thoughts you have? Any things you?
Sometimes if your child is able to help you in the kitchen, helping with the cooking process of the food as well too, they're able to see, this is how we use this food. And, they might not even notice, they're not going to eat carrots on their own, but they'll eat the carrots in a stew because they can't see it, right? So giving that kind of background if they're old enough to be introduced. But I think just consistency, positive reinforcement, the routine, and involving them is how you're going to get new foods introduced.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I think your point about involving kids in the kitchen is a great idea. And I think that's both a sensory experience for the child because they're like handling the food and they're smelling it and they're relating to it in a different way. But going back to what I was saying before about what I call intellectualizing the food process, even for those of us who consider ourselves foodies, and I would consider myself a foodie. I love to eat. I eat just about anything. Sometimes I will speak to someone like a chef who they just relate to food on a completely different level to me. And they'll talk to me about it. And I learn from the experience. I go like, wow, that's an interesting insight I wouldn't have thought of before. And it makes me appreciate the food even more. I think a lot of parents neglect to talk about food with their children. Maybe because we think of it as something so basic, like why do we have to talk about foods with kids? I read a brilliant article a few years ago, and it was an American mother, also a nutritionist, and her husband was French, so they divided their time between the U.S. and France. And she commented on the difference between how French children relate to food and how American kids relate to food. And she said, just in general, French children try so many more foods than American kids. And what she said was, if you watch the way French parents and adults talk about food to French children, it's far more sophisticated and in depth. They'll say to the child, hey, as you're tasting the, whatever it is, the, bok choy, can you taste the bitterness in the green vegetables? So they really intellectualize it. Can you smell the garlic in the food? And while I think a lot of Americans just plop food down, they're like, eat it, and then they're surprised when the child's just like, what's this? I don't like it.
Right. Yeah.
So start talking about food to your children. It's a really simple but can be a profound way to help kids relate better to the food.
And I would say too, no matter the age, not in a baby way, right? So we're not, this red, we're actually like talking to them about it, right? And then then that'll grow and it'll just become more part of the program.
Yeah. I like, just to give an example of this. This happened with me today. My wife Melissa went food shopping and she brought back a fruit called I think it's called a lychee. I think it's a Asian fruit, but I probably am wrong about this. It's not common in the US. And Melissa ate one. I was like, oh, that's weird. And then she was like, oh, it's so delicious. And she described it. She said, oh, it's so floral. And I was like, So I tried one. It was one of the most delicious things I've ever had. But even her just describing it as floral got me kind of interested. And when I ate it, I was like, she's right, it's floral. So that's just an example of kind of intellectualizing food.
My mother as a kid used to say, oh, this tastes like the color blue. And you'd be like, what does the color blue taste like?
Interesting. Yeah. It makes you interested. I got to find out
what is that?
And by the way, even if you disagree and you say, no, it tastes like the color red, fine.
Right. You're still having a conversation about it and it's still tried, right? So
that's exactly right.
It did what it needed to do.
Okay. So let's see here. All right. Next question that doesn't quite have to do with picky eating, but is a common one that we get is, how does the Doman program work on nutrition-based Oh, like how do we adapt nutrition programs based on specific test results?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think from a picky eating standpoint, some of the times picky eating can come from vitamin and mineral deficiencies. We've seen, iron deficiencies be a source of picky eating, B12 deficiencies. Um, uh, so it sometimes the lab work is really helpful to see how we can help a child. Gut issues can also lead to picky eating. So something like an OAT test can be really helpful to see how we can help the gut, heal the gut, so that your child can experience more of the foods and the nutrients they need from their foods instead of from other ways. Um, and in terms of our nutrition program, like the other programs in the Doman method, it is tailored to your child. So if we are helping your child through picky eating, it's kind of our number one priority, because we can't really add in other foods until we address, okay, where's the picky eating coming from? So from that sense, the lab work is really helpful, just to give us, again, a big picture of everything, right? We're able to talk to you to see where we're at with the diet, what foods are ones that your child would avoid, what foods will they eat, and then seeing the big picture of what's going on in the body that's helping support that or not support it, right? So it's definitely really helpful to get in the lab work for a picky eating standpoint, just to see where your child is at.
Yeah, those are all great pieces of advice. By the way, one of my favorite things to do, now this is more with a child that we have started to have a breakthrough in terms of their willingness to try different kinds of foods, right? So very often when a child starts the Doman program, if they're a picky eater, we're going to do all the things we just discussed. We're going to do the oral integration. We're going to do smell and taste. By the way, when we start smell and taste stimulation, we're giving incredibly small quantities of the food. I literally mean a tiny speck on the child's tongue so that they can taste it, but it's not overwhelming to them, right? So we're just trying to touch on that curiosity, trying to increase their curiosity a bit and not overwhelm them with the sensory experience. And then as the child becomes more open and welcoming, we'll increase the intensity by giving them more of those things. And one of my favorite things to do when a child is really trying new things is to do a fun family challenge, which is 100 new foods in 100 days. Where, yeah, this wasn't my idea. Mom gave me this idea. She made a chart with like a calendar, and every day she put a different food. It was like, today we're trying green beans, and tomorrow we're going to try kale, and the day after that we're going to try pineapple or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the kid loved it. Like the kid got into it because it was like every day was something new, and the kid checked off the day when it was over. And you can imagine, I mean, if a child tries 100 different foods in 100 days, at the end of that, not only are they going to be a child who's very open to trying new things, they're going to be more knowledgeable about food than probably the average adult is. So yeah.
Wow. Shoot. I want to do that.
It's the kind of great idea I would never come up with. Only a mom can come up with that good an idea.
I would say that's a really great challenge for a kid that doesn't have, gut issues, or we're worried about inflammation with foods that we would typically eliminate, or allergies in general, because trying new foods so close together that they never had before, we'd have to worry about, okay, if they had avocado for the first time today and now they're having some kind of reaction, then we'd have to worry. So right. I think if you're at the point where you're like, I'm not really worried about reactions or things, then I think, hey, go ahead. Or maybe it's just once a week, a year worth of one new food.
That's a great point. So that's my follow-up question. So if a family is worried about things like intolerances or allergies, how far should they space out brand new foods that the child has never tried before?
I would say about 3 to 5 days. Sometimes with the programs with families, I'll give, don't introduce anything new, like only new introductions are each week. So like every Monday is a new thing, whether it's a new supplement or a new food, right? Because an allergic reaction can present, a severe way where we have to call your emergency line, the child's throat is closing up, or, maybe a couple hours or an hour after eating, there's a rash on the face or somewhere else on the body. And intolerance could be a change in behavior, or something that's going on in the body. Maybe day 3 after having avocado, your child has really loose stool.
Mm-hmm.
Or they've been constipated, right? Or they're not sleeping at night, or they're tired all the time. So that's some things to look out for too when trying anything new, or having anything new in the environment.
Yeah, great points. Yeah, Jane has a great point here. She said rating foods can be fun. I like that because it goes along with intellectualizing, right? If we're giving a numerical rating, how many stars do we want to give this vegetable? It leads to a conversation, and it also allows the child to give their opinion, right? What did they feel about it?
Yeah, we have for older kids on the program who are able to take, charge of their own diet and nutrition needs. We have a checklist that they would use to go through their daily routine. If they tried any new food today, they could check it off. And then there's a little chart that we give that goes over, what is a food that I eat that doesn't make me feel good. They can write that down. What's a good replacement for that food, right? So maybe, French fries, I eat them, but they don't make me feel good. But a replacement is maybe sweet potato, right? And then the final column on the chart is, did I like it, and or did I not, and why? So that's a really fun way to talk about food and to get their input on the food as well. And they can keep track of, the foods that they've tried that, if they do or do not like.
Okay. Yeah. And Jane also pointed out here that sometimes starting with touching a food, describing what it feels like, even putting on the back of the hands can be a fun experience for parents and kids to help chain it from touch to smell to taste.
Oh yeah. There's tons of different crafts you could do with foods, right? There's like a apple stamp. You could, paint with berries. You could, however you can make the food feel safe. There's a way. Somebody's found a way on YouTube to do it.
Yeah, and there's a question here in the comments. Can you help kids on an NG tube or a G tube? The answer is absolutely. In fact, many of the things we're talking about today, like oral integration or smell and taste stimulation, we would often do with those children. The difference is we do a higher frequency. So we do many more sessions of oral integration. And maybe instead of doing 2 or 3 sessions in a day, we might do 6 sessions, right? And the other thing regarding children on a tube, almost always they have severe or profound respiratory issues that are getting in the way of eating, because an important part of eating is the ability to regulate your breath, right? So when we're chewing on food, for example, we're not breathing through our mouth when we're chewing on food. And so we have to be able to regulate breath. And a lot of children with neurological issues have difficulty with that. So we do a lot of oxygenation programs to improve their lung capacity and their ability to regulate their breathing. And that makes them much better eaters. It helps them with chewing and swallowing food as they eat. And then we can, no, I want to hear your thoughts. But I was just going to say, that's how we can kind of move them gradually from tube feeding to oral feeding. Julie, go ahead.
That process is not a quick one too. So that's something that, maybe the first 3 months of program, we're working on the oral integration and the respiratory program. And then come month 4, we're working on trying things in the mouth, seeing how your child's able to negotiate, a little bit more solid food puree wise. And then from there we would come up with a schedule on how to, introduce the different foods and then the different textures, making the textures more solid. So there is quite a process to the transition from tube feeding to solid foods, but we have done it.
So everyone, if you're joining us right now here on StreamYard platform or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, start putting your questions into the comments and we will get to them in order. We just have a nice comment here from Monica who says, peaceful day. So grateful to be here. Thank you, Monica. We're grateful you're here too. We have a question here from Les. Is air fried food good for kids? Julie, take away.
In terms of our program, I would say, fresh is best. However, you can cook the food in, the oven or a slow cooker, or sauteing it on the stove top is probably the best ideal options to way to cook. But I think in the grand scheme of things, air fry is better than deep frying. So if there's a way, to get your child to eat what they want, you're, maybe using the air fryer to make some chicken and it's crispy with maybe some gluten-free flour as a coating, and you've made like a homemade chicken nugget and that's what they're eating, then that sounds great. A lot of the times we get that question, and it depends on where the family is with the program too. We never want to turn something that's their routine into something that's not realistic for them. So if the air fryer is on the counter and we're using it, then we figure out ways, how do we use it in it and make it mostly beneficial for your child, right? So I would say there's a yes and no to that. If there's a way that you could not use the air fryer, great. And if there's a way that if you are using the air fryer, how do we make it the healthiest way as possible?
Great. We also got a pre-submitted question. What are good protein sources for vegetarians?
Yeah. So we've got lentils, chickpeas, various beans, peas, quinoa, hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds in general, and nuts and other tree nuts, except we would eliminate peanuts off of the program and peanut butter because of its mold toxins. But other nut butters, nut and seed butters are also a good source of protein.
Are children in vegetarian families more likely to need B supplements? Not necessarily. Or is that something based just on lab work?
We would need to see the lab work in order to help there, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, not always the case. Yeah. I think I heard Dr. Aravind saying something similar recently. That often it's kind of assumed, it's just kind of said plainly, like vegetarians need to take B vitamins, but not always.
Some of the times if parents ask for it, we do recommend some plant-based protein powders too, which can also help. But that's in special cases.
Can you take us through, Julie, when a family comes to the Doman International Clinic, what does that initial nutrition meeting look like? How is it structured? What are the things that are generally discussed in a general way, obviously?
Yeah. So a lot from the beginning, the materials that our team needs are the set of lab work and a diet sheet. Those are so helpful to look at where your child is and where we want them to go, right? And the big picture of what's going on in the body. Because if picky eating is on the list, but we've got a lot of things that we have to help out from a supplemental standpoint, it may take a little bit of a back burner if there are other things that we have to make a priority. But the diet sheet helps me see where your child currently is at in terms of a calorie intake. Are they getting enough food, as well as what foods are they getting, right? If there are foods that we would typically eliminate from the diet that cause inflammation or brain fog, issues with gut-brain connection, then we might work on eliminating foods and finding substitutions for them. Then from a lab work standpoint, we will look and see, how is the big picture of the body working? Are things working properly? Are there things that we need to get more testing on to see how more in-depth information about them? Something like an OAT test is not put on our lab sheet, but if there's issues going on in the gut, maybe some gut dysbiosis, issues with bacteria, then we got to do further testing. But typically I start off with, looking at the child's height and weight, seeing if they're in a good and healthy range, they're carrying enough weight for their height. And then I go into kind of the history. Okay, so what are we working on physiologically, and what supplements are they currently taking, if they're on any medication, if they have any allergies, environmental or food wise. Then I go into the lab work and what we see and what we want to focus on this period. And then from there, I go into whatever Doman diet looks like for them, right? Because every child is different. And I always try to give all of the information so the families know what we talk about and what our diet is. But that might not be where your child is at right now, right? We might eliminate several different foods, but if your child can eliminate 2 of them, that might be where we're at, right? So it is specifically tailored for each child. Even though if you read or look at our course, you get to know everything, but you're not always doing all of that, right? And if you're already there, you're already doing the elimination diet, then we might talk about more of a rotation for your child, right? Again, making sure that everything is realistic for you because you're the one doing it. And if it's not realistic, it's not going to get done. So that's more of that part of the conversation. We also talk about hydration because being hydrated is so important to your child's daily life, right? And we talk about supplements, and then we have an immune system protocol that we give at the very end just to make sure that we've covered all of our bases because your child can't do program if they are constantly sick. But that's kind of the lowdown of how our initial program is.
So, Julie, I'm going to put you on the spot because I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question, but I'm interested in your thought because I think a lot of parents understand intuitively that improving a child's nutrition and supplementation can improve health, for example, or weight, things like that. But I'd love to know from you just initial thoughts. What are the top 5 pieces of feedback you get from parents about what their nutrition program is helping with? I just mean pragmatic changes that they're seeing in their child. So like, hey, Julie, I noticed the nutrition program helped my child blank. Can you tell us, like, what are the 5 most common changes parents will tell you?
Constipation, sleep, energy, picky eating, and probably gut health.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Well done. You did good with that. All right. Can you help children with chronic constipation, diarrhea? And before you answer that, everyone, I do want to say we've got a few more minutes here. If you've got a question, get it in now. Whether you're watching on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, type your questions into the comments box, and hopefully we'll get to it in time. Go ahead, Julie. Constipation and diarrhea.
Yes. So there are 2 far ends of the spectrum, right? Constipation is because we are not having bowel movements enough, and the diarrhea is that they're not formed, and the nutrients are maybe leaving the body when they should be staying in the body, right? So we have worked with kids on both sides of the spectrum. They are results of something bigger that's going on in the body that we have to help figure out where the support is needed. So in both those kind of situations, they're very different, but we do have protocols to help with both.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, great. Well, everyone, if you've got a question, we probably have time for maybe 2 more questions. So get them in wherever you are. Julie, anything else about picky eating that we didn't cover that you feel we should have?
I know in terms of the diagnosis of RFID, if your child has a avoidant food restrictive diagnosis, we have worked with kids who come in with that label. And it is very similar. All of the things that we've talked about today kind of help within that protocol. But again, because every child is different, that timeline looks different for every kid. Starting out at different points, how intense are we going to dive into it is also different. So if you have had your child diagnosed with that label, we have seen it and we have helped kids out of it.
Thank you. Julie, could you spend maybe 2 minutes telling us about what the Doman cookbook is and what parents might be helped by it?
Yes, I have it right here. You can also buy this on Amazon. Super fun. It has a lot of good resources. It does take you into more of an in-depth on the foundation of our program, the foods of which we avoid, cleaning, cooking equipment, why we recommend what we recommend. And there's so many recipes in here. It's just wild. Now, again, these are recipes that have been vetted by our team. Some of them do have some foods that we would eliminate. So make sure if you are looking at the cookbook and you see banana in there and your child is not having banana right now, then we find a substitution for it. So the recipes are really great. And it does talk a lot about different meal plans, different diets, a ketogenic diet, low oxalates diet, and just makes life a little bit easier so you don't really have to think for yourself if you're looking to try, any new recipes or making any new recipes a part of your Doman program. They're all right here. And if you have any questions about it, you can contact your coach. And if you need any substitutions for any of the recipes, they can come to me. But most of them are on Doman program. Like, we use dates instead of any sugar for sweetener. I think there's only maybe one high sugar dessert that is like a popsicle that is noted. This is a warning. It does have high sugar in it. But there's tons of great options here. Ice cream, dairy-free ice cream you can make at home. Also a fun way to get your kid to eat fruit and help them introduce them to doing things in the kitchen, right? Making ice cream together, super fun, and then you can eat it. Yeah, you can buy
Perfect.
that on Amazon.
Perfect. And there was one question here from Maria. She's asking in Spanish, but she's asking, are there any courses of nutrition that I could connect with? So Maria, I know that you've come for a visit in the past. If you contact your Doman International staff coach, they can send to you links on advanced nutrition courses that we have online. Julie, how many advanced nutrition courses do we have for families on the program?
Maybe like 7 or 8.
7 or 8, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, Maria, if you contact your coach and you say, hey, I'm interested in advanced courses on nutrition, they can send you links for you to access them online.
Okay. In your language too. We have a bunch of different languages.
Yeah. And you can find the Doman cookbook on Amazon. Unfortunately, right now it's only in English, but it is available. And probably the recipes are pretty easy to translate, even for people where English is a second language. All right, let me see if there are any final questions. Julie, I'll give everyone 1 more minute to see if they get any final questions in. So Julie, in addition to being a nutrition staff member, you're also a staff coach at Doman International. So you oversee children on the program. The families send their questions to you. Any specific children, I'm not asking for names, of course, but of the children you've been the staff coach for, any children that you can think of who have had like a special win in the last year or two that you could share with us?
Yes. So sort of most of the kids that I'm the staff coach for do have some sort of nutritional thing going on, which is great because that's my expertise. And very exciting. We have a young boy on the program who has definitely gotten better with his picky eating. His mom told me today that he tried and when it comes to picky eating, I would say if it's on the diet or not on the diet, completely fine. We don't want to put any pressure on eating a food that we're going to have to eliminate, right? And we don't tell them that. But like a pretzel, right? He tried a pretzel, which is crunchy, and it was just a really great feeling. I think Mom was also really stoked about it too. And he's, his trying new foods has become more casual, right? It's no big deal, right? But then we celebrate it too. So, but to him, if he's putting it in his mouth and trying it, that's great. Whether he liked it or not, that's a completely different story. But and he's been on the program maybe 6 months.
Okay. Got it. And out of interest, do you know, has that boy been doing like oral integration and some of the things we've talked about today?
He is doing oral integration. He has just started it though, so it will be a big kicker in the next, couple months too of his program.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I will say, especially for children who are kind of anxious to try new things or who have that mental rigidity we were discussing before, very often the rest of the Doman Method program helps reduce that, right? So sometimes we have children that we don't even need to specifically focus on the picky eating, because with the program itself, with the respiratory program and the physical and the cognitive program, they just start to become less anxious and mentally rigid, and they just open up to new things easier than they did before.
I have had another child on the program with just the introduction of ease take away the anxiety of trying new foods.
Yeah, ease, for those of you who don't know, is electronic auditory stimulation. So yeah, with an auditory program, his openness to trying new foods changed. Yeah, great point. We have a question here. Have you had cases of ARFID? I think you said before we have, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I mean, ARFID, I'm not an expert in ARFID, Julie, but I'm guessing it's really a catch-all term for children who are just very restrictive to trying new things, trying foods, right? I mean, it's
a severe reaction too, as well. Like, gagging, vomiting, just very upset about the whole experience, right? So that's why we take, several steps back. Let's not put so much pressure on it. Let's, and involve it in other parts of the program. It's not physically there in front of them, right? It's a picture. So maybe that's helpful too as well.
Wonderful. All right, Julie, any final thoughts before we end off?
No, I think we touched on it all.
Great. For anyone who joined late, make sure to go back and watch the beginning where we talked about what do we do in cases of picky eating? What's the kind of oral stimulation we do, smell and taste stimulation? How do we add variety in a child's diet? What are kind of games we play with the child to open them up to different kinds of foods? So definitely check that out. I am going to throw up on the screen just information for anyone who wants to reach out to Doman International if you're interested in scheduling an appointment with us. The summer is often a good time to schedule an appointment with us before we get into the September, October, November busy season. I think because it's around the start of the school year, that's when we tend to book out months in advance. But if you're interested in coming to see us in June or July or maybe early August, please reach out sooner rather than later. You can email Colleen Hudson, our Director of Representatives, at info@domaninternational.org, or you can call her or send her a message at 1, which is the US country code, 814-232-8668. And we look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. I was about to say Colleen, because Julie, I'm used to having Colleen here with me. Sure. Julie, thanks so much for joining us. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you here again next Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye.